That's kind of silly that they don't help you out. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the fun stuff. So did you swim on the varsity team as a freshman or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So swimming it's not like there's some sports where people are, sitting on the bench and are redshirting. Swimming for the most part, if you're on the roster, you can get in, you can compete. Even if you're a freshman, you're going in and usually going to competitions. So freshman year was just standard dealing with failing some exams because I had to miss school and just a normal college experience. It was when I showed up for my sophomore year that everything started to change. And that's when we found out that Amanda's going to be joining our team.
Okay, now let's talk about how that happened.
So we go back to school. So the way that swimming, first to paint the picture, the swimming season starts on October 1st. That is our official day. We practice before then. And you start practicing the minute you step on campus, but it's captain's practices. It's not mandatory, but everyone goes. And so the first week of classes is the beginning of September or the last week of August, sort of around that timeline. And we're doing our captain's practices. Everything is normal. And I remember this so clearly. It was a Friday, the first Friday of September. And our coach tells all of us, and it's the same coach for the men's team and the women's team. So this is important. And he says, okay, we have to have a mandatory team meeting. And every time you have a team meeting, it's the men and the women together. Because if there's an announcement that we need to know, it's the same coach. We always are together. He told us the men are going to have a meeting first, and then the women will go. And I remember thinking that was so bizarre because, again, there was nothing the men's team ever needed to know that we didn't also need to know. We had the same schedule. We swim at the same meets. All the meets are co-ed for the most part. I think there's one or two that's not. And I said, okay. So we wait for the men. They walk out of the team room. They finish the meeting. They don't say a word to us. I'm like, okay. I walk into the team room, and I was one of the first people there. So I'm towards the front. So I'm can't see how many of my teammates are even behind me at this point. And my coach is standing there. And a member of the men's team is standing right next to him. And this men's team member was by the name of Wolfe Thomas. And he was the grade above me. So at this point, he was a junior. I was a sophomore. And I said, why is he still standing here? And I was like, okay, well, surely he'll leave. And then our coach will start the meeting. So everyone gets there and our coach is like, okay, Will is still standing there. And he goes, Will, this is your meeting. Looks to him and says, Will, this is your meeting. And I thought to myself, what could a member of the men's team possibly have to tell the entire women's team in a meeting? And he looks at us and in under 30 seconds just looks at the entire room and says, hey guys, I just wanted to let you guys all know that I'm transgender. I will be transitioning to your team next season. Please refer to me now with she, her pronouns. Oh, and also, I haven't announced what my name change is going to be yet. So please call me Will, but refer to me she, her.
That's it?
And at this point...
Hold on a minute. That's all he said?
That's all he said. And at this point, I'm choking back laughter because I'm 19 years old. What am I supposed to think? I'm covering my mouth and I realize I can't see anyone else's reaction. So I turn around. My entire team clapping. Congratulations. We're so proud of you. Thank you for coming out to us. Thank you for being your authentic self. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, does nobody else think this is crazy? And so for the brief moment in time, and people laugh when I say this, but I'm so serious. My coach was always a joking guy. He would always make jokes. He was always making fun of people. He was a lighthearted guy, our coach. I thought that he was going to pull out a camera crew and say this was an episode of Pranked or something, or Candid Camp, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And I thought that it was going to be a social experiment. And we were just seeing how everyone would react. But that never happened.
So so next practice, he's just practicing with you?
So this is when it starts to get weird. So notice in what I had said is he had told us I'm going to be transitioning to your team next season. So at this point in time, it's the beginning of the season. So everyone had a million questions. Our coach just said, we'll all talk about it. Don't worry about it. Start practice, get in the pool. I don't think I even paid attention to a single thing that happened. That practice, my mind was spinning. The second practice ended, I went back to my locker. And I went onto the NCAA website and I said, why is this allowed? What is going on? And I found this thing called the Transgender Inclusion Handbook. And in the handbook, it simply says 1 year of testosterone suppressant and you can be on any women's team in any sport. D1, D2, D3, any sport. And so I said, okay, so surely he must have started the protocol at some point within the last couple of months and he needs to wait some period of time before he's allowed to compete with us. And so eventually, everyone's asking our coach questions. We ask questions about the locker room. We ask questions about how this is going to work. And so not just in this meeting, I think over time, over the next couple of weeks, we're told he's going to continue to compete with the men's team. He started the protocol in May. So he was already a couple months into this in the announcement in September. So by May 2020, he would have been eligible to compete on any women's team in the country. And we're told all of that. And the locker room situation is the most interesting because he's still undressing in the men's locker room. And so I will tell you this funny story because I just saw one of my friends from the men's team at Penn a couple weeks ago. And he was telling me his perspective because I asked him about it. And he said that it was the weirdest thing. He had the locker next to Will. And he said that one day he was putting on his suit and it just kept going because he was now wearing a woman's suit, but changing in the men's locker room. And that was the way my male teammate on the men's team described it. He said, yeah, normally we all putting the little Speedos the men wear. It's funny, but they wear those. And he said in the suit just kept going and he was wearing a one piece. And so he was still undressing in the men's room, still going by the name Will, competing on the men's team, but wanted everyone to call him she, her pronouns. And then he started being invited slowly to women's team events. So we'd have team dinners every now and again, or team bonding activities, or team trips. And he would be invited to both the men's team ones and the women's team ones for that entire season. And he was competing in a women's suit, sometimes competing on the men's team, but he didn't go to every competition. They kind of it was just a transition year, as they say. Bizarre is the best way to explain it.
What was it like having him at your team events, like your bonding events? Like that stuff's important for team building. So were you the only one that thought this was insane?
So what's so interesting, I am the type of person, for better or for worse, I wear it on my face. Like if you say something weird, you'll know. Like people are always like, oh, I feel like Paula doesn't like me or whatever, because I'm too expressive. And it's not that I don't even like people. It's just I react to things. I'm very honest, and that good or bad. And so immediately I'm having conversations with everyone on the team, and girls one-on-one are telling me that they completely agree that this is completely messed up. They're like, yeah, this is so unfair. But then you go to the group and they're clapping and they're like, oh, I'm so proud of you. But behind the scenes, they're like, yeah, this doesn't really seem right.
They're afraid to get canceled.
And so the funny about the team bonding is right after this announcement, end of September, we do this team activity every single year. And you split up into small groups. It's roughly 2 girls per grade that are part of this. And you have a dinner and you answer questions about the team. And it's supposed to work on team culture and camaraderie. And then the next day, everyone comes together. Of course, in my breakout group, he's part of it. And so I can't even make this up. There was 8 of us part of this group, and one of them is this 6'4" tall, fully grown man named Will that I'm supposed to call she, her pronouns, who's still competing on the men's team and decided he was a woman 2.5 weeks before. And I was 9. I remember this, and I said, of course he's in my group. And we had to just have this conversation and pretend whatever. And I remember I lived with one of the captains on our team, and she pulled me aside after this thing because she wasn't part of the group I was in. And she said, how was it? Was everything okay? Is everyone including Will? And I was like, yeah, I guess. I didn't even know what I was supposed to say. And again, it's also power dynamic because I'm an underclassman. This is a senior asking me this, who's a captain. And I was like, this is so bizarre. And so I was very obsessed with reading NCAA policy at this time. I would have one-on-one conversations with anyone who would listen. I remember I had friends that weren't on the swim team, that were on other sports teams, or just RIM students at the school. And this is all they would hear me talk about. I had friends on the track team that told me I was making it all up. They were like, "It's no way, you're just pulling your leg." I'm like, "No, I'm so serious." And I remember one of my friends in the track team, I told about this at the very beginning of 2019. We had having a mixer with track a couple of years later. Will was competing on the women's team and actually on the women's team. And I pointed and I said, "Remember what I told you 2 years ago?" And he was like, "No way." And I was like, "Oh, it's real."